Coming to you from the Ultra Staff Studios in Chicago, welcome to the Staffing Buzz Network with your host, Bob Petke. You know, I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. I do not get old, or that does not get old, listening to that intro. Hi, everybody. My name is Bob Petke. I am the Chief Sales Officer here for ABD, Automated Business Design's Ultra Staff Edge. We are an organization that offers a solution, an ATS CRM solution for both your front and back office. And so we've been in the staffing industry, promoting some different things right now, and we are on another installment where we're actually promoting on this podcast the Midwest Staffing Conference yet again. So a little bit about the Midwest Staffing Conference is it's going to be held April 23rd and 24th at the Drury Lane Conference Center in Oak Brook, Illinois. And it's going to be a fantastic conference for people that are like-minded in staffing. It's a highly two-day anticipated event. It's designed for staffing professionals from all over the Midwest. They're all converging and coming together to share their experiences, to collaborate and to learn from industry leaders. And what I'm going to recommend for those that are watching and haven't enrolled yet, you can go ahead and enroll. I believe the early bird enrollment is getting close to expiration, so you're going to want to check on that. But if you're an ISSA member or a WAS or a MAS member, you can go ahead and email info@isssaworks.com. And again, good event, tremendous, big, good event. We're going to have experts in staffing on both the sales side, the recruiting side, operations. So that's something to be excited about. We're going to have a lot of partner companies there. So if you're looking to partner with different companies, as far as some of the things that you bring in to run your staffing business, all of the best of the best are going to be there. So with that said, I'm going to transition here this morning, and I'm excited to bring on stage today's guest, Robert Reid. Robert, good morning. How are you?
I am well, Bob. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, you've been like Willie Nelson on the road again, right?
Yes, I am. I am on the road right now. Be on the road next week. It's but it's fun. I love because I work from home, getting out of the house and traveling around and getting to meet with people. Always a great part of my job. Perfect.
Hey, Robert, for people who don't know who you are, and I know you're really, really well known on the circuit in staffing. Robert is really a principal at Butler Street. 13 years of staffing experience from business development to recruiting and key account management. Additionally, Robert is a highly successful improv theater talent and a creative content writer. His ability to add fun factors as he does instruction, through his trainings and his e-learning and his learning sessions is really helping increase retention of the Butler Street's highly successful methodologies, processes, and skills training. A little bit more about Robert. He utilizes those skills and his ability as a corporate trainer to perform for various theaters, including the famed Second City in Chicago. And Robert has facilitated training sessions for companies and organizations looking for a unique approach to training on topics such as communication, collaboration, innovation, anything else that ends with an Asian, skills, as well as, team building. A little bit more, even so, about Robert. He's performed both improv and sketch comedy for corporate entertainment offerings. And prior to his role as a corporate trainer, Robert actually began his process with Randstad, an international staffing firm that's currently ranked as the second largest in the world. So, Robert, there's a lot of things going on right there that I think people are going to be drawn to. First and foremost, people love to be entertained, right? So you've got that going for you. And then side by side, your experience, right? Your experience in driving business, because when you were with Randstad, you were handling some on-site key accounts, for both Jacksonville and in Chicago. And then, recruiting manager, you were, for PPR, and then you were at, is that Human People Services? So you got a lot of experience, both, on the, how would I say it, entertainment, and then also staffing. And I think in staffing, we're often easily entertained anyway. So to have someone with that chemistry, welcome again.
Thank you. Yeah, hearing you rattle all that off, I was like, man, I guess I've done a lot in my life. But yeah, it's interesting. I found kind of the perfect marriage of the two worlds that I live in with Butler Street. Being able to be because I do a lot of training. Okay. And training for me is performing. I am on stage and all of my participants need to be entertained if they are going to learn. So being able to bring that staffing knowledge and the entertainment background, it's a match made in heaven for me.
Right. And imagine, right, because you got to bring your A game. You got to be up. You got to be motivated. I try to do that even here in this segment. And I'll tell you, an hour doing this, it'll exhaust you.
Yeah, I know.
Right? Because, yeah.
I think I did yesterday. I did 6 hours straight training. Sometimes you got to dig deep, but it's worth it. I love it.
No, absolutely. So you're at Butler Street. We've had Mike Jackato on. I'm familiar, and Mike's a great guy. Worked with Marianne as well. Tell us about what you, more specifically, but besides the bio, tell us more about your day-to-day, your life with that group.
Sure. It's interesting. I'll be coming up on 6 years with Butler Street this May, and the vast majority of what I do is training. I think last year I did 673 hours of training. The way that this year's shaping up to be, I'm going to surpass that this year. We are super busy. I think I've got 97 hours of training this month. So that is the vast majority of what I do. Is I'm running sales training sessions, recruiting training sessions, leadership, account management, ChatGPT workshops, all of that stuff. So that is the vast majority of what it is that I do. A little bit of what you heard in my bio is the content creation, which anytime we have an initiative to do an overhaul of one of our e-learning programs, I'm oftentimes doing the voiceover for it. I'm coming up with funny videos to make it entertaining, a lot of that content creation as well, which is nice to get to kind of scratch that creative itch from time to time. But yeah, a lot of training, and I love it. I love getting to connect with people and watching them blossom and get better. Yes. Probably the most satisfying part of my job.
So, one of the things we know in staffing is competition's high. The world is small. So when people that are, looking to maybe bring on different training features and functions or options to their, organizations and staffing, there's some other choices out there, but why is Butler Street the place to go?
I think when you think about a training organization, so we do management, consulting, research, we do all of these things. We're not just a training organization, but I think what really makes us unique is we all worked in the industry. We all worked in the industry for many, many years before we kind of came together and said, let's up the game of the entire industry. Let's put together a game plan where we really elevate the staffing industry. So I think that's kind of what sets us apart is our unique and in-depth staffing knowledge.
No, yeah, and that's one of the things. A lot of Ronstadt folks there, a lot of people that have earned their keep in staffing. And again, it's funny how everybody seems to know each other. The more time you spend in the industry, like myself, many years in the industry, and here I am on the other side of things, but nevertheless talking staffing every single day.
I know. I know we tend to fall into this industry and we stick it out. We like it.
Robert, it's funny you say that, and I bring it up all the time. I usually tell people, and it's kind of I'll run it by you too. I say that you don't choose staffing. Staffing chooses you. I think about as a kid, when you were a young man, if you had brothers or sisters or friends and neighbors, it's not like you played staffing, right? right? I mean, unless there's something to talk about here. Somehow, some way, staffing chose you. How did you get into staffing?
It's interesting. I mean, I think what you just described is what happened to me. I graduated from the University of Florida with a degree in advertising. I didn't know what I wanted to study in college. Sure. I chose advertising because it seemed to have a little bit of the creative elements to it. But after college, it was very difficult for me to find a job. I was going on interviews, and my brother worked at Randstad. So I feel like a lot of jobs happen because you've got that personal connection. So he introduced me to the local team in Jacksonville, got me an interview, and the rest is history. I had an awesome career at Randstad, such a great organization to work at. 11 years was great. Awesome.
So, the purpose of why we're here, obviously, to learn about you and to get people interested in the Midwest Staffing Conference, April 23rd, 24th. Don't forget, email info@isssaworks.com. Don't forget about that. But, you're going to be doing you've got two sessions. And the first one is it's the opening keynote. And that's going to be, it's titled From Challenges to Champions, Building Success in 2025. And it's empowering resilience and driving innovation in the rapidly evolving world of staffing and business. So that's a mouthful, brother.
It is.
So talk to us a little bit about that, right? Let's wet the whistle and talk a little bit about what you're going to cover and through the process, maybe talk about why people want to come and hear that.
Yep. Well, the first thing that I thought to really mention when I talk about the speeches that I do, the workshops that I do, is they're interactive. Okay. I think just in my career, I would go to a speech and it was the speaker talking. And I think for me as a training facilitator, I'm always looking to engage. I'm always looking to draw the audience in. And so one thing that I really do with my speeches is there's a lot of audience interaction. I'm going to ask questions of the audience. We're going to field that information and use it. But when we think about kind of the focus of this keynote, Butler Street is really built on a foundation of what we call the four cornerstones of success, which are attitude, personal accountability, perseverance, and habit. Mike Jackito, who you mentioned, raised his children on the four cornerstones of success. One of them owns their own marketing company. One of them owns their own staffing company. And the other one is a successful lawyer. So he did something right. Sure. And so when we think about 2024, it was tough, not an easy year. It was tough for us as well. But what we do at Butler Street is we really lean into those four cornerstones. If you're gonna be successful, you got to have a positive attitude. If you're going to be successful, you have to be personally accountable and stop using all of the excuses to justify a lack of results. We're big on let's get a little bit better every single day and then developing those great habits. And I will tell you, we had double-digit growth in 2024, and it was not easy. We had to buckle down and fight. But if you have that foundation of those four cornerstones, that fight is easier. You have that foundation to really back you up. So when we think about entering 2025, that's going to be a big part of my speech is you got to master these four, and they've got to be a daily priority, because I think we can all agree, is it better to have a positive attitude or better to not have a positive attitude? This is a rhetorical question that we all know the answer to. And so it's mapping out, how am I going to make that a priority? So that'll be a big part of my keynote, as well as I always weave in improvisation into every event that I do. So the exercise, the speech will have a lot of different improv-based concepts and exercises as well, because improvisers are great at dealing with change. Mm-hmm. Because that is what improv is on stage. It's one change to the next change. None of them were anticipated. And so being able to share some of that knowledge and techniques is a great way for people to learn how to navigate change and find success.
You talk about in that heading, driving innovation. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I think it's it's Bob, it's taking, this is the world we've always lived in and flipping it on its axis.
Okay.
I think when we think about innovation, innovation is committing to thinking differently. It's committing to looking at the world differently. It's committing to being creative. And I think most importantly, it's committing to failing, which is, I think, something we're all terrified to do. But what I think we miss is that failure is the ultimate growth opportunity. And it's actually it's a big part of improv. We actually see failure, we call them gold nuggets. Okay. Because when I'm doing an improvised scene and somebody makes a mistake on stage, all the actors jump on that mistake, and it now becomes the new reality to the delight of the audience, because it's so refreshing to see a mistake become the central, that focal point. And so encouraging people to fail forward, and innovation is a result of all of those things.
You know, when people are afraid to take a chance, right? And it's kind of on that same process about that whole failure thing. You know, what's been your experience when people, you know, don't get out of their way and they don't, you know, they just kind of stay reclusive? You know, are people able to thrive and survive in that, or is it something that they just always have to be considering, is like looking for the next thing, because the world's always changing and it'll pass you by?
It totally will. And I think just as we experienced with the advent of the internet, we're in the same kind of situation with AI. And the one thing that I'm really pleased to see is probably a year and a half ago, I would do a speech and ask people, who's using AI? Who's using the ChatGPTs, the Copilots of the world? Not many hands went up. The good thing that I'm seeing is now when I ask that, a lot of hands go up.
Sure.
Which is good.
Yeah.
But that should tell the people who are in the I'll wait and see holding pattern that they're now the minority. So the whole sit back and wait and see what happens is a very dangerous mentality in thinking about how quickly our world is changing. You cannot do that. And so it is this idea of, don't worry about making the big changes, make all the little changes, because all the little changes lead to that progress. So you got people who are in a wait and see pattern, start making little changes.
You know, which leads us into the, you know, your next segment when you're at the Midwest Staffing Conference, into the rabbit hole and bravery and uncovering client truths, asking the right questions, embracing the answers, and following them fearlessly. You know, when I see ask the right questions, I thought there was no such thing as a good or bad question. So tell me about asking the right question.
Yeah. Yeah, there is that mantra, there's no stupid questions, to which I would say, yes, there are.
Okay.
There are absolutely stupid questions. You sit down with a customer and say, so tell me what you do here. That's a stupid question. You know, it's interesting, Bob. I think one thing that really started to kind of buzz around in my brain during 2024 was because again, all I do every day is train salespeople and recruiters, staffing professionals all day. And the one pattern that I started to see was that people don't know how to ask great questions.
Okay.
People know how to ask the questions they're comfortable with. These are those stock pre-planned questions. The reason that we're comfortable with those is we're comfortable with the responses. So the reason that I added the word rabbit hole to the title of that workshop is, you ask a really great question, you're committing to go down a rabbit hole. And there's a lot of fear that comes with that, because when we ask a really deep, detailed question to get that customer to open up, now we're stepping into a situation we may not be as familiar with because we don't know what that customer is going to say. But if we think about the most valuable question you can ask, it's the one that leads you right down the rabbit hole, because that's when the customer says, finally. I'm not getting what feel like transactional questions. I'm getting really deep, thoughtful, consultative questions. Thank you. So
consultative questions, right? I mean, that's you know, that's where I've always gone, because you know, we live in a world where I think the average person shows up for maybe like a discovery meeting, and they ask all of the transactional questions Some of them might border on transactional. Like maybe they say, what are the things that keep you up at night, right? As far as, trying to staff and do recruiting. But it's really those consultative questions like, what happens when you don't have a full staff? Asking people things like, are you rewarded through KPIs internally and bonuses if your whole team shows up and your productivity is better? These are different things than what's the start time, what's the end time, when do they take lunch, who's the supervisor, things like that. So I'm on board with you. So, I think about those consultative questions that really separate everybody, from the pack, because we've got, if you got 100 people that are out there doing the same thing, there's probably 93 of them. And as you get to more of them, that number will decrease. But, they're all just asking the same things and then just asking for orders. And then they're not coming in prepared for these meetings. What do you think about preparation when you're having meetings and asking right questions? What kind of prep work are you recommending or seeing?
Sure. Well, I mean, one thing I'll do just to comment on the last thing that you said, everybody's kind of doing the same thing. And we wonder why customers say you're all the same.
Yes.
I've dealt with one agency, you're all the same.
Right.
It's because everybody's behaving the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for people who are listening to this, who are coming to the conference in April, you want to break out of that mold. Asking better questions is a fantastic way to do that. So, and to address the second thing that you asked, Bob, was planning. We like to say the Benjamin Franklin quote, a failure to plan is just a plan to fail. Mm-hmm. At Butler Street, if you don't plan for a customer meeting, I mean, it's probably going to lead to some pretty serious disciplinary action. Like we don't mess around with that. We are big on planning. So when I say planning, we're identifying every single person that we're meeting with, and we are stalking them. And by that, I mean, we are doing tons of research. We're finding them on every social media outlet. We are doing a ton of research. We're setting goals for the meeting. We're putting together questions for the meeting, agenda for the meeting. We're anticipating, practicing, preparing for those objections that we know they're coming. So let's not just wing it. Let's have a solid game plan. So yeah, we take that very seriously at Butler Street. The amount of planning that we do is tremendous. I mean, typically it's a 3-page document that we fill out before each meeting.
You talk about, the objections are coming. And, one of the things that I always would tell the teams that I was working with is, imagine that you're on your way home from work and you knew that a bridge was out. You would anticipate that was out, and you would have a plan to detour that, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing, right? If you know what some of these objections are, you don't just run into them. Sometimes you can craft and draft your verbiage to eliminate it and answer it all at the same time. And then when you do get those objections, I'm a believer in like turning those objections into your objective. Mm-hmm. In other words, if somebody says to me, you guys are all the same, you brought it up just a second ago. Well, it's funny you say that. And now I need to turn my objection into the objective. I need to demonstrate to you that I am not the same, right? And so I think it's a tremendous message that you're bringing to the table here. And, prep work, I think, is key. I think what even led me to even ask you that question, because I'm not scripted on this one here, is you said something along the lines of, well, what do you guys do here? Right? And it's like, what the heck is that? Yeah. What do you see what happens, you got some before and after, right? Because you've worked with people that are probably doing things where they're just doing the textbook, questions that are very, just very factual. And then you've got people thinking, what are any kind of one or two stories of somebody that's really kind of taken it to the next level after going through some of the things that you and your organization have presented?
I think in my role, where I see that growth is from session to session to session. Typically, I do a 9-part series. And, one of the things that we do is we start talking about questions, and then we get people into what we call role practice. We don't call it role play because we're not playing. We call it role practice.
Sure, makes sense.
And that's where I really see that growth happen. And oftentimes you'll see that transition of somebody who was very transactional, and you can see them taking that, although sometimes reluctant because it requires that bravery, but they take that step to really ask that deep question where, we say something like, all right, so what I'm hearing you say is that your third shift is never fully staffed. You're having to shut down lines. So let's talk about that. How does the first shift team feel having to pick up the slack because third shift couldn't do it? Let's talk about the truck drivers that are in the warehouse. They're at the bays waiting to take off, but they can't get the product on the truck. And you see these types of questions begin to emerge from training participants. And like I mentioned earlier, that's the most satisfying part of my job.
No, that's great. And, so the folks that are going to be coming to the Midwest Staffing Conference, April 23rd and 24th, are in for a treat. And so, we're going to be excited to have you here. You probably got a lot of things going on between now and then, but we know you'll be refreshed and ready to go on the 24th because you've got 2 sessions on that day, brother. As we start to kind of wind up our conversation here, you've been doing this for a while. You've worked in staffing. You've got some of probably the scars, the blood, sweat, and tears that all of us, have shared. There's a certain fraternal order of staffing. If you can think, let's fast forward a year from now, and people are going to just now listen to what you're about to share, because I'm going to ask you if there's 1 or 2 things that people can implement in their day-to-day in staffing, recruiting, sales, whatever it might be. If there were 1 or 2 things that they can do that might not be on their radar right now, what would you recommend? And then if we polled these folks a year later, they'd be like, yeah, you know what? Reid was right. Well, do you have something in your toolbox that you can share?
Yeah. I think there are 2 words that I think are most important for people to think about who work in the staffing industry, and that is genuine interest.
Genuine interest.
If you think about our industry, it's people from every angle. It's candidates, it's customers, it's each other. I mean, it is people all day, every day. And I look at people who've worked in this industry who kind of don't want to connect with people. And I encourage them to find a different industry. Because if you think about it, it's relationships. And if you're not genuinely interested in understanding people, finding out what they did with their family the previous weekend, and genuinely being interested in what it is they have to say back to you, you're going to struggle in this industry. And I think there are people who that comes naturally to them. I feel like our industry can attract a lot of extroverts sometimes and like, I got this. I think, but for the people who may not naturally feel that desire for genuine interest, you can still work on it. You can still get good at it. And it is taking your needs and wants, just set them to the side. You'll get to them. Everything is about the needs and wants of your candidates and customers. We got 2 sets of customers in this industry, candidates and customers. So you make their needs and wants like your North Star. That's everything you're focused on. I think that is a great adjustment. On top of that, what I would add to that is if I could get every single person to role practice regularly, we would all be much better. But people choose to improvise versus planning. I've been doing improv since 1998. I would never step into a conversation with a customer without a game plan. And I'm real good at improvising.
I was going to say, that's got to be a learned skill for a guy like you who loves to improvise.
Yep.
Or have you always been talented to be able to do planning and improvisation?
I think I probably learned what really strong planning looks like when I joined Butler Street.
Okay.
But because the planning and the preparation and the structure and the organization is at a higher level than anywhere I've seen in my entire career. And so I think understanding that you could be the best improviser in the world, but you will stumble and fumble if you're not prepared for what the customer is going to say to you. And so don't insert that variability in the process. Have a game plan.
Have a game plan. Robert, it's been a treat. We're excited to have you at the Midwest Staffing Conference. I have a feeling you're going to be very well prepared for these sessions.
Yes.
And I think just people need to come in, and they also need to be prepared to have an open mind and to, just really kind of take in, what you're going to be able to share with them based on experiences. So, Robert, thanks for being here, and we'll see you in just a little over a month and a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Bob, it has been a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Excited
Likewise.
about this conference.
Awesome. Thanks, Robert.
All right. Take care.
You too. Robert Reid from Butler Street. What a treat. And I'm looking forward. I'll be there. I'm interested to see what he's going to share. I know he's going to have a plan, but I'm also wondering about his improvisation and, what are some surprises that he's going to have in store for us. So, again, if you haven't done so already, make sure that you are setting yourself up to attend the Midwest Staffing Conference, April 23, 24. It's going to be at the Drury Lane in Oak Brook, Illinois. If you're in the Midwest, or, even if you're hearing this and you want to come on in, you can always go ahead and register for that. You can do a Google search on Midwest Staffing Conference 2025, or to kind of zip you in a little bit closer to that, you can always go ahead and email. And again, I'll give you the email address. It's info@isssaworks.com. That's info@isssaworks.com. April 23rd, 24th. If you're coming in and flying in, it's close to both of the Chicago airports. There's accommodations right there, on the property. So you guys are going to be a good space for that. So just a little reminder of who we are. Bob Petke here at Automated Business Designs. Chief Sales Officer here for our software, UltraStaff Edge. If you're interested in learning more about how we integrate in the staffing world and how we have just really been a fixture for over 42 years providing this type of a service and solution, make sure you reach out to me as well. But with that said, everybody, thanks for joining us on another episode of the Staffing Buzz Network. Make sure, if you haven't done so already, to go ahead and hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And also, you can watch these on YouTube as well. So with that, guys, we'll hopefully see you all at the Midwest Staffing Conference. And until next time, Bob Petke signing off with the Staffing Buzz Network.